My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34 years old, and for almost 20 years, my parents treated me like their maid, while my younger sister Olivia lived like a princess. Every Christmas, every family dinner, I was hidden in the kitchen while she shined in the spotlight. But last Christmas Eve, when my mother ordered me to cook for 25 of Olivia's VIP guests, with less than a day's notice, I finally refused. And what happened next didn't just humiliate my parents in front of a Fortune 500 CEO, it turned me from the invisible daughter into the boss they never saw coming. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Christmas Eve. While they were setting pizza boxes on Waterford crystal plates in Connecticut, I was 500 miles away in a Florida suite, staring at a black leather folder that held a $2 million contract. The glow of the chandelier over their dining room must have bounced off greasy cardboard, while I sat by the ocean with champagne on ice. Two worlds colliding in the most ironic way. I remember scrolling through my phone that night. Photos had already leaked online. Executives in tailored suits, forced to balance pepperoni slices on heirloom china, their faces caught between politeness and disbelief. A caption under one viral post read, "When prestige meets Papa John's." I laughed quietly to myself, not out of cruelty, but out of release. For years, I had been the silent backbone of those dinners, the one who made my parents look accomplished. And now, the moment I chose myself, their carefully polished reputation cracked like thin glass. Victor Ramirez, the CEO they had been dying to impress, texted a colleague that very evening, "Worst dinner of my life," and the hostess my mother. I could almost hear his voice when I read those words the next morning. A man used to first-class treatment left with pizza grease on his cuffs. I closed my eyes in that Florida suite. Not from shame, but from irony so sharp it almost tasted sweet. For 2 decades I had been invisible in that house, useful only when pots needed scrubbing, or when Olivia wanted to dazzle without lifting a finger. Yet here I was, about to sign a deal that would expand my company across the country, while they scrambled to hide cardboard boxes from the eyes of powerful guests. Sometimes the moment of their greatest humiliation becomes the beginning of your light. I had learned to be invisible early. When I was 16, my father introduced Olivia at a family gathering as our future star in public relations. I stood beside him holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres, wearing an apron stained with cranberry sauce. Nobody asked me where I wanted to study or what I dreamed of. I remember a neighbor whispering, "Isn't that the older one? The quiet one? At least she's useful in the kitchen." That word useful stuck with me like a thorn. Over the years, the pattern hardened. The Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving, Olivia held the carving knife with a smile while I carried dish after dish to the table. Birthdays, anniversaries, Easter brunches, it was always the same. She entertained, I served. My parents reinforced it with subtle comments that felt like nails being hammered one by one. Emily doesn't have Olivia's charm. Emily prefers to stay in the background. Emily's between jobs again, but at least she cooks well. Each remark became a brick in the wall that separated me from them. I built my silence into a fortress. And inside that fortress I started planning. By 27, I had founded Aurora Events. At first it was just me, a rented kitchen space, and 2 part-time assistants. I poured every cent I had saved from waitressing and freelance gigs into the venture. I named it Aurora because I wanted it to represent light breaking through darkness. No one in my family knew. They assumed I was drifting, surviving off scraps, maybe still waiting tables somewhere in Boston. That assumption gave me freedom. The less they expected, the more I could grow without interference. 5 years later, Aurora had 50 employees across 3 locations, with a client list that included luxury resorts and, yes, Fortune 500 companies. I signed contracts my parents couldn't even imagine, but I never told them. I didn't need their recognition, or so I thought. Last December, the call came. I was packing for Florida, folding blazers into my suitcase when my phone lit up with Mom's name. Her voice carried that tone I knew too well, the one that left no space for negotiation. Cancel whatever you think you're doing tomorrow. Olivia is hosting her networking dinner. Very important people. 25 guests. You'll arrive by noon to start cooking. 7 courses, 10 sides. The menu's already planned. Don't embarrass us. I pressed the phone against my ear, staring at the email glowing on my laptop. Victor Ramirez, CEO of Solterra Hotels, confirming our in-person meeting the next day. If only she knew. People who matter, Mom said. Not your usual crowd. Her words cut, as they always did, sharp enough to reopen old scars. People who matter, unlike me. I ended the call without agreeing. My plane ticket to Florida sat on the nightstand, departure 8 p.m. on Christmas Eve. For once, their emergency would not erase my priority. When I refused, my mother's fury shook through the line. If you leave, don't bother coming back. I almost laughed. Wasn't that what they had done already? Locked me into the role of servant, invisible until needed. This time, I chose myself. The fallout was swift. At 6 p.m., their kitchen remained spotless. Olivia texted frantically. Mom's losing it. Guests are arriving. Do something. I turned off my phone. By 7 p.m., pizza boxes were stacked on the crystal plates. By 8, the first photos hit LinkedIn. By 9, their proud name was trending in whispers of disgrace. Meanwhile, I sipped black coffee in a quiet hotel lounge, reviewing slides for my presentation. 50 employees were counting on me. Maria, my head chef, had just placed an offer on her first house, trusting that this contract would secure her mortgage. James, my operations manager, was planning to enroll his children in better schools. This wasn't just my dream anymore. It was theirs too. As the ocean waves pressed against the shore outside my window, I realized something. For years, I had thought of myself as the invisible daughter. Yet invisibility had been my shield. Behind it, I built something powerful enough to stand on its own. And the very man they tried to impress with cardboard boxes and false charm was the man who would soon shake my hand and call me boss. That night, as lights twinkled across the Florida coast, I whispered a truth I had been too afraid to claim out loud. I am not your maid. I am not your scapegoat. I am Emily Carter, and tomorrow I will no longer be invisible. The irony was perfect, almost poetic. Their humiliation had already begun, and my redemption was just hours away. And that was only the beginning. When I was 15 years old, I was hanging garlands on the banister of our front porch, while Olivia, my younger sister, twirled in a sparkling dress in the living room, greeting guests with that effortless smile everyone adored. I can still see the contrast so clearly. My fingers were stiff from the cold as I tied knot after knot, making sure every loop of ribbon faced outward, while laughter from inside spilled through the windows, carried by Olivia's voice. Guests called her radiant. Nobody noticed me outside in the freezing air. That was the rhythm of my adolescence. She shined, and I worked in the shadows. It wasn't just that night. Every holiday followed the same script. At Thanksgiving, I was the one chopping onions until my eyes stung, basting turkeys and washing silverware. Olivia floated through the dining room in heels, balancing a glass of sparkling cider, charming every adult in sight. Our parents set the stage for her applause while handing me an apron. And what hurt most wasn't the chores themselves, it was how invisible I became. They never asked me if I wanted to sit with the guests, never wondered if I had stories to tell or achievements to share. They simply assumed I would disappear into the background because that was where I belonged. The pacing of those years was painfully slow, like wax dripping from a candle. One remark after another hardened into habit. I overheard relatives whispering once when they thought I couldn't hear. At least Emily is useful in the kitchen. Olivia now, she's destined for success. I stood behind the pantry door holding a platter of rolls, their words piercing deeper than any knife. But I walked out, smiling, set the basket on the table, and acted as though I hadn't heard. That was how I survived, by swallowing humiliation in silence. One summer evening, while I was rinsing dishes at the sink, Olivia announced to the family that she had landed an internship in Italy. My parents clapped with delight, their pride swelling so loudly it filled the entire room. I stood at the sink, water running hot over my hands, and listened to them call her brilliant and ambitious. Not once did anyone turn to me and ask what my plans were. They didn't know I had just been accepted into a hospitality management program in Boston. They didn't ask because they didn't think there was anything worth asking about. Their indifference didn't kill my dream. It fueled it. The deepest cut came the year I returned home from college to find my bedroom gone. I walked up the stairs, expecting the familiar comfort of my space, the posters on the walls, the bookshelf stacked with my old novels, the trophies from school competitions. Instead, I opened the door to discover racks of Olivia's designer clothes shoes lined in neat rows and jewelry boxes crowding the dresser. My bed had been pushed aside to make room for a vanity mirror glowing with round bulbs. My heart dropped into my stomach. My room had been erased. My childhood had been packed into cardboard boxes and stacked in the basement. When I asked my mother, she waved it off without guilt. Emily helps so well in the kitchen. Olivia needs the space to build her image. Her words were delivered so casually as if they made perfect sense. To her it was logical. To me it was devastating. That bedroom had been my sanctuary, the one place where I felt I existed on my own terms. Now it was a showroom for my sister's ambitions. I carried the boxes myself down to the basement. Each one felt heavier than the last, not because of weight, but because of what they contained: fragments of who I was. Old sketchbooks with faded pencil drawings, a framed photograph of me and my best friend from middle school, and the certificate from my first debate competition. Objects that once meant pride now looked like evidence of a life erased. The basement smelled of dust and cement, dimly lit by a single bulb. As I stacked the boxes, I realized something. They thought they had pushed me into darkness to forget me. But maybe the darkness was exactly where I could start building my own light. Those boxes became symbols. Every time I walked past them, I reminded myself that I had worth they chose not to see. They could deny me recognition, but they couldn't erase the contents of those cartons. They couldn't erase the skills, the ambition, the resilience sealed inside me. There was another evening when I baked a 3-tier cake for Olivia's birthday party. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, smoothing frosting and arranging roses made of sugar. The next day, guests clapped when Olivia sliced into the cake, praising her for how perfect it looked. Not one of them knew I had made it. I stood in the kitchen washing bowls while she accepted their compliments with a coy smile. I wanted to step out and say that was my work, my labor, my artistry, but my feet felt cemented to the floor. That was the unspoken rule of our house. Olivia received the credit, I cleaned up the mess. The twist of losing my bedroom hurt more than I can explain. It was the day I stopped expecting fairness. Instead, I began planting seeds of independence in silence. I worked part-time jobs, saved every dollar, and enrolled in extra classes. I stopped telling my parents about achievements because they never asked. When relatives inquired politely about me, my mother would laugh and say, "Emily is between jobs again. At least she helps in the kitchen." They built a narrative of failure so consistent that people believed it without question. But inside, I was sketching plans for something bigger. I remember the night I filled out the business registration for Aurora Events. I sat at a wobbly desk in my tiny Boston apartment, the sound of traffic humming outside. I didn't tell a soul. It felt like a secret vow between me and the boxes in that basement. Aurora meant dawn, a light breaking through darkness. That was the life I was claiming for myself. Before leaving home for good, I returned to the basement one last time. I brushed dust off the old photo frame of me holding a trophy, ran my hand across the faded cardboard, and whispered to myself that one day, these boxes would no longer be hidden. One day, I would carry them back into the light, not as reminders of pain, but as proof of resilience. That image of me walking down the stairs with boxes in my arms remains etched in my memory. It is the moment I became determined to rise. It is the reason I endured years of invisibility without breaking. Cut back to the present. I am in my Boston apartment, sitting at my desk with my laptop open. On the screen glows a contract from a Fortune 500 client addressed to Aurora Events. My company, born out of silence, is now commanding respect from executives across the country. The blue light of the screen reflects against my face, and I think back to that basement, to those cartons stacked like tombstones of a childhood dismissed. When you are pushed into the shadows, sometimes, that is where you learn to ignite your own light. I closed the laptop gently, a small smile forming on my lips. My parents believed they had buried me under boxes of neglect. What they didn't realize was that those boxes had become my foundation. From the darkness they forced me into, I had built something that could not be ignored. And the time was coming when even they would have no choice but to see me clearly. In their eyes, I was unemployed. In Forbes, I was a founder. That contradiction lived at the center of my life for years. Whenever my parents introduced me at family gatherings, their words cut the same way. Emily is between jobs. Emily is figuring things out. They would smile politely and change the subject to Olivia, who always had a story ready about her latest PR client or glamorous trip. No one knew that while they dismissed me as aimless, I was quietly building something that had already grown beyond their imagination. Aurora Events began in the smallest way possible. I rented a cramped kitchen space above a bakery in Boston. The walls were stained with smoke, and the ventilation rattled whenever the ovens kicked on. I didn't care. I scrubbed the counters until they shone and told myself that even empires begin with soap suds and sleepless nights. I worked 16 hours a day, taking orders no one else wanted. Corporate luncheons, charity brunches, baby showers in tiny apartments. Every event became a chance to practice excellence. If the budget was $50, I treated it like 5,000. That commitment became my signature. At first, it was just me and two part-time assistants, both college students who believed in me enough to accept long hours and modest pay. I promised them that if we grew, they would grow with me. I meant it. 5 years later, those assistants had become managers, and Aurora employed 50 people across 3 cities. We had our own fleet of vans, a warehouse filled with equipment, a staff of chefs, planners, designers, and coordinators who trusted me to steer the ship. When I walked into the Boston headquarters on Tremont Street, glass doors sliding open to reveal the logo etched in silver, I always paused for a second. Aurora, the dawn. A name I had chosen when I was still living in the basement shadows of my parents' house. Now that word gleamed above reception, and clients in tailored suits sat waiting in our lobby with portfolios and contracts. The pacing of my days had changed, but the memory of invisibility still followed me. In the mornings, I would stop at a coffee shop where the barista knew my order, then head into meetings stacked back to back. I would sit at the end of a long table, surrounded by my team, scrolling through proposals and budgets. Yet sometimes, as my staff took notes and looked to me for direction, I would hear echoes of my mother's voice. Emily doesn't have ambition. Emily prefers the background. It almost made me laugh. I had become a background that held up an entire company. The twist came one morning in December, a week before Christmas Eve. I opened my laptop in my apartment and saw an email waiting from our CFO. The subject line was simple: Pinnacle Hotels. I clicked it, my heart quickening. Victor Ramirez wants to meet in person, the email read. He's impressed with the proposal. This is the turning point. I leaned back in my chair, staring at those words. Pinnacle wasn't just any client. It was the kind of contract that could shift us from regional recognition to national prominence. 5 luxury resorts in Florida. Exclusive catering rights. A deal worth $2 million. I placed my hand on the black leather folder sitting on my desk. Inside was the contract, still waiting for signatures. The folder had become my talisman, a reminder of how far I'd come. I ran my palm across the surface, smooth and cool, and thought about the basement where I once stored all my forgotten trophies. Now I had something real, something no one could box up or take away. That morning I called a meeting with my leadership team. Maria, my head chef, walked in with flowers still dusting her sleeves. James, my operations manager, carried a notebook filled with figures. They sat down, eyes alert. I told them the news. Pinnacle wants us. Victor Ramirez is flying to Florida. This could secure our future. Maria's face lit up. James exhaled a long breath of relief. We've worked for this moment, he said. This isn't just your victory, Emily. It's all of ours. I nodded. I had never seen leadership as a crown to wear. It was a responsibility heavy but necessary. My staff had mortgages, children, and student loans. They counted on me not just for paychecks, but for vision. That day, I felt the weight of 50 lives pressing against my shoulders, and instead of crushing me, it strengthened my resolve. Later that night, as the city lights sparkled beyond my apartment window, I sat alone with the contract folder. I thought about my parents and how they still pictured me living hand to mouth. If they knew the truth, would they recognize me? Or would they cling to their narrative of the failed daughter who only cooked when ordered? My phone buzzed on the desk, breaking the silence. The screen lit up with two words that froze me for a moment. Mom calling. I stared at the name, my fingers hovering. My hand still rested on the folder, grounding me in the reality I had built. On one side of the table, a contract that could redefine my career. On the other hand, a call from the woman who had once told me my place was in the kitchen, that Olivia needed the spotlight more than I needed space to exist. I didn't answer. The phone rang until it fell silent. The next morning in the office, my assistant brought me a tray of reports. We were preparing for final negotiations. Everything had to be perfect. As I reviewed the slides, my mind drifted. In my parents' house, Olivia was probably being praised for her charm, her networking, her endless stream of opportunities. They didn't know that I was preparing to stand across from Victor Ramirez with numbers, vision, and a team ready to deliver. They didn't know that while they laughed about my supposed instability, Forbes had already emailed asking for a feature. I remembered opening that message from the Forbes editor. We'd like to highlight entrepreneurs who built their businesses without family money or connections. Your story fits perfectly. I had to read it twice, stunned by the irony. In my parents' living room, I was still an invisible daughter. In the pages of a national magazine, I was a symbol of resilience. As I closed the laptop after midnight exhaustion pressing down on me, I whispered words that steadied me. Success doesn't need permission from those who once denied you. I repeated it like a mantra. Because the truth was, I had built this without their money, without their connections, without even their belief. Every step came from long nights, from the determination that grew in the basement with those dusty boxes. The next day, Maria stopped by my office. She hesitated at the door before stepping inside. Emily, she said softly, my husband and I just made an offer on a house. We wouldn't have had the courage without this company's growth. Thank you. Her eyes were shining. At that moment, I realized the empire I had built was never just mine. It was woven from the hopes of people like her, people who had also been underestimated, overlooked, told they weren't enough. James came in later with his usual calm. My kids will transfer to a better school district next semester, he said. All because we're stable now. He tapped the folder on my desk. Don't let anyone, not even your family, make you feel small about this. He was right. I smiled, though part of me still ached. Because no matter how high I climbed, a small voice in me still longed for my parents to notice. That evening, I set the folder on the table again and smoothed the cover. I imagined sliding it across to Victor Ramirez, imagining the weight of the pen as I signed. My phone buzzed once more. Mom calling. I didn't pick up. Not yet. One day, she would learn the truth, not because I begged her to see me, but because the world itself would shine a light too bright for her to ignore. The black leather folder gleamed under the lamp, a symbol of everything I had built, everything I had become. For years they thought of me as the invisible daughter. What they didn't know was that invisibility had given me freedom. I had used it to build an empire. And now, as the phone stopped ringing and silence filled the room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Success doesn't need permission from those who once denied you. I whispered it again, then closed the folder gently ready for the next chapter. Cancel your plans. Tomorrow you'll cook for 25 guests. Those were the first words out of my mother's mouth when I picked up the phone. Not hello. Not how are you, not even a hint of warmth. Just an order. Her tone carried the same cold sharpness it always had, as if she were reading from a script she had performed my entire life. I sat on the edge of my bed, suitcase half packed at my feet, and stared out at the Boston skyline through the window. The city lights blinked against the winter night, and in my lap lay the black leather folder containing the Pinnacle contract. My mother's voice filled the room, brisk and clipped. Olivia is hosting her networking dinner tomorrow. Very important people. Executives, you'll need to arrive by noon. 7 courses, 10 sides, dessert pairings. Don't embarrass us. The pacing of her words was slow, deliberate, meant to press me down. I could almost picture her standing in the kitchen of our Connecticut home, phone in one hand, list of demands in the other, convinced she was still orchestrating my life, like one of her dinner parties. I glanced at the desk beside me, where my plane ticket to Florida lay, departure 8 p.m., Christmas Eve. The contrast was almost comical. On one side, a contract that could change the trajectory of my company forever. On the other hand, a phone call demanding I abandon it all to cook for guests who didn't even know my name. I tried to breathe evenly, but anger pulsed through me. Mom, I can't. I have a business trip. Silence, then a sharp laugh. A business trip, Emily. Stop being ridiculous. Your sister needs this. Family comes first. I felt my jaw tighten. Family isn't servitude. For a moment there was nothing but static between us. Then her voice rose hard and accusing. Don't you dare talk back. Olivia is hosting executives from Pinnacle Corporation, people who matter. Do you understand? My heart skipped at that name. Pinnacle. My mind spun. Could it be? I walked to my desk, opened my laptop with trembling fingers, and pulled up the guest list she had sent as an attachment. My eyes scanned line after line until they stopped at one. Victor Ramirez, CEO, Pinnacle Hotels. My breath caught. The very man who was supposed to meet me in Florida was scheduled to sit at my parents' dining table tomorrow, expecting a lavish feast prepared by their so-called unemployed daughter. It was almost absurd. Years of being invisible and fate had arranged this collision I could never have scripted. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. Mom was still talking, her voice dripping with condescension. Use the Waterford crystal. These people have sophisticated palates. Olivia will make the connections we need. I imagined her smiling proudly, promising her guests a dinner crafted by her daughter as if that would elevate Olivia's networking. My eyes flicked to the black folder on the desk. $2 million. 50 employees are waiting for stability. Maria's mortgage, James's kids, and now this impossible demand, this trap disguised as duty. I closed my eyes and answered, my voice calm but firm. I'm not coming. The silence on the other end was heavy, like a storm about to break. Then her fury erupted. If you leave, don't bother coming back. Do you hear me? You will ruin Christmas. You will ruin your sister's chance. You will ruin this family. My hands shook, but not from fear. For the first time I realized I wasn't the one being unreasonable. I was choosing survival. I was choosing the life I had built in spite of their disbelief. I opened my suitcase and folded a blazer carefully on top of the stack. The fabric was crisp navy blue, the kind of blazer I had once dreamed of owning when I was scrubbing dishes in their kitchen. My phone vibrated with another call from my mother. I let it ring. Minutes later, a text arrived from Olivia. Mom says you're cooking tomorrow. Don't screw it up. These are important people. I stared at the words, the arrogance, the assumption that I would always obey. A bitter laugh escaped me. I set my plane ticket on top of the contract folder. The contrast made me pause. 2 thin pieces of paper, one promising freedom, the other demanding chains. I placed my hand over both, feeling the choice beneath my palm. And then I knew. I would not sacrifice everything for a family that only saw me when they needed labor. My phone buzzed again, another text from Mom. Remember, family comes first. I whispered into the quiet room. Family isn't servitude. The pacing inside me shifted. What had begun as slow, heavy words pressing me down now turned into a quickening pulse and acceleration toward clarity. I zipped the suitcase shut, slid my feet into polished black heels, and stood. I was no longer the girl carrying boxes into the basement. I was the woman preparing to carry an entire company forward. I lifted the contract folder, placed the ticket neatly on top, and slid them both into the suitcase. My fingers lingered on the zipper before pulling it closed with finality. The sound was sharp, like a door shutting on years of submission. In that moment, I realized something vital. Saying no was not betrayal. It was self-preservation. It was the first true act of loyalty I had ever shown to myself. Later, as I wheeled my suitcase to the door, I glanced back at the room. The lamplight reflected off the leather folder, still visible in the side pocket, a gleam of black against navy. That image the folder paired with the plane ticket became my symbol of defiance. A reminder that my future no longer belonged to their demands. The phone lit up one last time before I turned it off completely. Mom calling. I let it fade into silence. Sometimes the bravest word you can say is no. And sometimes that no is the only thing standing between you and the life you are meant to claim. As I locked the door behind me, the suitcase rolling steadily across the floor, I whispered the truth that steadied me. Saying no is how I save myself. And with that, I stepped into the night, not as the servant they had always expected me to be, but as the CEO they never believed I could become. If you leave, don't bother coming back. My mother's voice cracked through the phone like ice breaking on a frozen river. It wasn't a threat she invented that night. She had said variations of it for years. When I declined to drive Olivia across town in the middle of an exam week, when I asked for a small loan to pay rent during my early 20s, she mocked me for poor planning. Every time I resisted, she dangled the same punishment: exile. Only now, at 34, standing in my Boston apartment, with a suitcase packed for Florida, the words landed differently. They didn't feel like chains. They felt like confirmation that leaving was the only way forward. I took a slow breath, letting the silence stretch between us. Her anger was palpable even through the phone-sharp intakes of breath, the rustle of papers, as if she were pacing the kitchen with a clenched fist. I imagined her staring at Olivia, the golden child, who was probably perched on a bar stool with a glass of wine, listening with that smug half-smile. My mother hissed again. You think you can just walk away, after everything we've done for you? I spoke carefully, measuring each word like laying down stones across a river. I'm not your maid. I'm a CEO. The silence on the other end broke into laughter. It wasn't joy. It was disbelief, ridicule, and a sound that told me she would never take me seriously no matter what proof I had. A CEO. Please, Emily, stop living in your fantasies. The pacing slowed every second, a test of my resolve. I could feel my heart pounding, but my voice stayed calm. Aurora Events is real. I have 50 employees. I have contracts you wouldn't understand. I am not coming tomorrow. Her laughter sharpened into venom. Olivia needs this. If you cared about family, you would show up. I tightened my grip on the phone. Family comes first when you need free labor. The rest of the time, I'm invisible. Olivia snatched the phone, then her voice sugary with a bite underneath. Emily, stop being dramatic. Just come tomorrow and help out. I'll pay you $200. I almost choked. $200 for a day of work that my company billed at $5,000. She thought she was doing me a favor. I answered slowly, savoring each syllable. Olivia, my rate for personal chef services is $5,000 per day. $200 is what you tip the valet. She gasped, then scoffed. You're unbelievable. Nobody will pay you that. I didn't argue. There was no point. I simply set the phone down on the desk for a moment, staring at the black leather folder and the business card resting on top. Emily Carter, founder and CEO, Aurora Events. The card glowed under the lamplight. That simple rectangle of cardstock carried more truth than any of their words. It was my declaration, my line in the sand. I picked the phone back up. I'm not negotiating. I'm leaving tonight. Do whatever you need to do for your party. This is not my responsibility. My mother's fury exploded in the background. You ungrateful child! You owe us everything. You will regret this. I pressed end call. The screen went black. For the first time in years, I felt the surge of relief that comes from cutting a rope tied around your throat. The pacing shifted fast now. My phone lit up with text after text. Olivia. You can't be serious. Mom's having a meltdown. Just come. Another from my mother. This will destroy us. Answer me. Then another. You're ruining Christmas. I turned the phone face down on the desk. A notification chimed from the Uber app. Your driver will arrive in 10 minutes. The timing felt like fate. One door closing, another opening. I zipped my suitcase and placed the business card deliberately on the wooden table by the window. If they ever chose to step into my world, that card would be waiting. Not as a plea, but as proof. Proof that I was more than the servant they had fashioned me into. I whispered to myself, half in fear, half in exhilaration. Boundaries. This is what they look like. I had never spoken that word in our family context before. Boundaries didn't exist in the Carter house. There was only obedience and performance, but tonight I was drawing the first line. Memories cascaded through me as I waited for the elevator, carrying Olivia's dresses up 3 flights of stairs. She washed lipstick stains off glasses while she giggled with guests. Hearing my father praise her charm to strangers while introducing me as being between jobs. Every slight, every erasure pressed against me, daring me to retreat. But I kept walking. The Uber driver greeted me at the curb. Suitcase, he asked. Florida, I said simply. As the car pulled into traffic, my phone buzzed one more time. I ignored it. Through the window, Boston blurred into streaks of light, and I felt both the weight of loss and the spark of freedom. I knew the cost of boundaries. My mother's threats were not idle. She would rage, she would smear me to relatives, Olivia would call me selfish. My father would retreat into silence, his preferred form of complicity. But for the first time I understood that the cost of staying silent was higher. Every yes I had given them had chipped away at my life. This was saving me. The car sped toward the airport. My thoughts moved between fear and excitement, like waves against rocks. Would Victor Ramirez look at me differently, knowing my family considered me a maid? Would my parents ever recover from the humiliation of serving pizza to executives? None of it mattered more than the truth unfolding before me. I opened my purse and pulled out another business card. Emily Carter, CEO. I traced the embossed letters with my thumb. That card was no fantasy. It was reality. Every sleepless night, every insult endured, every box stored in the basement had built it. I imagined setting that card down in front of my mother one day, not as an offering, but as a mirror. By the time the car reached the terminal, my fear had shifted to clarity. Boundaries were not cruel. They were the foundation of dignity. The driver unloaded my suitcase and wished me safe travels. I nodded, gripping the handle tightly. Inside the airport, I moved with purpose. The announcement boards glowed with departures. My flight to Florida blinked on the screen on time. I rolled the suitcase across the polished floor, each step echoing louder than my mother's threats in my head. As I settled into the seat by the gate, I finally turned my phone back on. Dozens of missed calls, texts, filled with capital letters and exclamation points. I scrolled once, then deleted them all. The black folder in my bag felt heavier than ever, not with dread, but with possibility. The loudspeaker called for boarding. I slung the strap of my bag over my shoulder, and whispered the message I wanted to carve into my life forever. The first boundary is always the hardest, but it is also the most important. And with that, I stepped forward, carrying with me the weight of a choice I should have made years ago. The line had been drawn. I was no longer theirs to command. I was my own. By 7 p.m., the kitchen was still empty. Not a single pan on the stove, not a single dish in the oven. My parents' grand dining room gleamed as it always did, silver-polished Waterford crystal gleaming under chandeliers, but the air was thick with panic. Guests were pulling into the driveway while the refrigerator sat full of raw ingredients that no one knew how to prepare. For years, they had leaned on me to make miracles out of those ingredients, to turn ordinary poultry and produce into a feast that upheld their social standing. But this year, I wasn't there. I wasn't there to hide in the kitchen. I wasn't there to save them. I was thousands of miles away in Florida, holding a hotel keycard, about to step into a suite where real power waited. Back in Connecticut, Olivia paced the foyer in her sequined dress, phone in hand, her tone shrill. "Mom, where's Emily? She's supposed to be here!" My mother's face was flushed, her pearls trembling against her collarbone. "She's not answering. Just start the oven." Olivia froze. Start the oven with what? She doesn't cook. She never had to. That was always my job. By 7:15, the first cars rolled up. Tail lights reflected against the icy driveway as expensive shoes crunched across gravel. My father opened the door with his practiced smile, welcoming in men in dark suits and women in designer gowns. Guests handed over coats and glanced toward the dining room expectantly. The table was set as if ready for a banquet. But no smells of roasting meats or simmering sauces filled the air. Only silence. The pacing quickened as the room filled. My mother flitted from guest to guest, her voice an octave higher than usual. "Drinks. Yes, drinks. Please have champagne. We'll be serving dinner shortly." Her eyes darted toward the kitchen, a silent scream. Olivia whispered to her. "What do we do?" My mother hissed back. "Call every restaurant in town." Phones lit up under the dining tablecloth. Olivia's manicured fingers stabbing at numbers, my father muttering into his own phone. "Sorry, we're fully booked for Christmas Eve," one restaurant after another told them. The clock ticked louder with every rejection. At 7:30, guests began exchanging looks. At 7:40, my mother's hands shook so violently that she spilled champagne onto the carpet. By 7:45, Olivia slammed her phone down and said through clenched teeth, "Domino's will deliver in 30 minutes. That was the twist. 25 guests, executives, and investors gathered in one of the most ostentatious homes in Fairfield County, waiting for a gourmet meal, only to watch cardboard pizza boxes arrive at the door. My father tried to make a joke as he carried them in, but his voice cracked. "Dinner is served." I can picture it, because I saw it later through photos posted online. Pizza boxes spread across a table draped in linen slices, laid out on Waterford crystal plates, greasy fingerprints smearing silver forks. The absurdity was breathtaking. A night that was supposed to cement Olivia's reputation as a PR rising star had collapsed into a humiliating spectacle. One of Olivia's colleagues snapped a picture, unable to resist. The caption read, "Prestige on a budget, on a." By morning, the photo had gone viral on LinkedIn. Executives who had been there tagged others, adding comments like, "The strangest holiday dinner of my life." Within hours, strangers across the industry knew that Margaret and Daniel Carter had served takeout pizza at their so-called exclusive Christmas Eve party. But perhaps the most damning moment was whispered in the corner. Olivia, desperate to salvage something, leaned toward Victor Ramirez himself. "We ordered pizza," she stammered, "because, well, PR budget issues." Her lie collapsed before it left her lips. Victor had been expecting a curated dining experience. Instead, he sat holding a paper napkin under a slice of pepperoni, watching a family unravel. Meanwhile, my mother tried to distract, loudly blaming me to anyone who would listen. "My older daughter was supposed to handle this. She's unreliable. Always has been." Guests nodded politely, though their eyes betrayed judgment. The truth was stark. Without me, their carefully constructed illusion fell apart in less than an hour. And while chaos consumed their dining room, I was checking into a hotel in Miami. The lobby glowed with golden lights poinsettias arranged elegantly on marble floors. A concierge handed me a keycard embossed with the resort's logo. "Welcome, Ms. Carter. We're delighted to have you." My suitcase rolled smoothly behind me, the black folder resting securely in the side pocket. The contrast could not have been sharper. My family in Connecticut serves pizza on heirloom silver. I am in Florida preparing to sign a multi-million-dollar contract that would redefine my future. I sat on the hotel bed, opened my laptop, and saw the first notification. Someone had tagged me in a LinkedIn post. I clicked, and there it was, the photo of pizza boxes scattered across my parents' table, glasses of expensive wine set beside greasy cardboard. My breath caught. The comments were merciless. "Prestige meets Papa John's. Is this a networking strategy? Or performance art?" I scrolled, half in disbelief, half in awe. The humiliation I had carried for years was suddenly laid bare, but it wasn't mine. It was theirs. The pacing slowed as I leaned back, letting the irony wash over me. For 2 decades, I had been their invisible labor, their guarantee that everything would be flawless. They assumed my absence would never matter, but the truth was written across that photo. When I wasn't there, the illusion collapsed. I closed the laptop and looked at the contract folder. My fingers traced the embossed logo. For years, they had reduced me to a servant. But tonight proved something undeniable. I had been the foundation of their reputation all along. And now, without me, their truth was exposed. I thought back to the words my mother had spat at me earlier. "If you leave, don't bother coming back." She meant it as punishment. But as I set the folder on the nightstand, I realized it was liberation. They had wanted me invisible. Instead, their humiliation was now visible to the world. Somewhere in Connecticut, Olivia was probably crying in her bedroom, makeup smudged, scrolling through the viral posts. My father was likely pouring himself another drink in silence. My mother was crafting excuses, insisting to anyone who would listen that it was all my fault. But deep down, they knew the truth. I had never been a failure. I had been the one holding everything together. And here in Florida, as waves crashed softly against the shore outside my window, I whispered the message I had learned through fire. When they no longer have you, the truth reveals itself. I turned off the lamp, slid under the covers, and slept peacefully for the first Christmas Eve in 20 years. Not as a servant, not as a disappointment, but as a woman who finally chose herself. "Sullivan, are you related to Margaret Carter?" The question landed in the boardroom like a dropped glass, sharp and shattering in the silence. Victor Ramirez's eyes lingered on my face, then slid to the black leather folder resting on the polished mahogany table. His tone was polite, but I felt the weight underneath. The entire Pinnacle Hotel's executive team looked up from their notes pens, frozen midair. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My pulse thudded in my ears. The boardroom windows stretched from floor to ceiling, overlooking the Atlantic, where waves crashed against white sand. But inside, the air had gone still. I pressed my palms against the cool surface of the table, steadying myself. "Yes," I said finally, my voice calm though my chest burned. "Margaret Carter is my mother." Silence. Then Victor leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. His assistant, a young man with quick hands, slid an iPad across the table. On the screen was the now viral image, pizza boxes sprawled across Waterford crystal wine glasses, catching the glare of the chandelier. Next to it, comments scrolled endlessly. "Prestige meets Papa John's." Someone even tagged Victor, writing, "Sorry you had to suffer through that." Victor's lips twitched. He tried to hold composure, but then laughter erupted, rich and uncontrolled. He set the iPad down, wiping his eyes. "I knew last night was surreal, but this is beyond irony." He looked straight at me. They spent the entire evening complaining about their older daughter, said she was unreliable, said she was unstable, said she couldn't hold a job. And now, he gestured at the folder between us. Here I am about to sign with that daughter the CEO of Aurora Events. The pacing shifted sharply. The room that had been tight with silence now buzzed with whispers, incredulous chuckles, and sideways glances between board members. I didn't flinch. I had lived inside their insults for too long to let them pierce me now. Instead, I sat taller, folded my hands, and let them see me without apology. Victor leaned forward again, voice quieter, but sharper. Do they even know? No, I said. They never asked. They never wanted to know. The black folder gleamed under the lights, its presence almost ceremonial. 5 years of sweat, sacrifice, and silence distilled into that contract, a symbol of everything I had built while they reduced me to a shadow. Victor tapped the folder lightly with his finger. They served me pizza on Crystal while insulting their daughter, the very CEO I'm here to sign with. I've been in business for 30 years, Ms. Carter, and I've seen arrogance, incompetence, and denial. But I've never seen it packaged quite so neatly. The board members laughed quietly. One muttered, "You can't make this stuff up." I let a small smile curve my lips. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Victor studied me, his eyes narrowing then softening. You didn't flinch when I asked about your mother. That tells me everything. You're not hiding. You're standing in it. I nodded. I've been underestimating my entire life. It's given me practice. The twist was complete. For decades, I had been invisible in my family. In this boardroom, the very humiliation they thought would bury me had become my proof. Their ridicule was now my leverage. Victor turned to his legal counsel. I don't need to deliberate. We've wasted enough time. He slid the folder across the table toward me. Ms. Carter, let's sign this. I opened the folder, the paper cool and crisp beneath my fingers. My pen glided across the signature line, each stroke steady, deliberate. The sound of ink on paper echoed in my ears like a drumbeat. When I finished, Victor reached across the table, hand outstretched. Congratulations, Emily, he said. Aurora Events is officially our partner. Our hands met in a firm shake, the kind that seals futures. Cameras clicked from his assistant's phone, documenting the moment for Pinnacle's press release. In the corner of my vision, my phone lit up on the table, vibrating violently. 50 missed calls. Mom, Olivia, even my father, who rarely dialed my number. The phone buzzed again, rattling against the wood like it wanted to break through. I didn't touch it. Not yet. The contrast was too poetic. While my family's desperation pulsed through unanswered calls, I was securing a contract that would define the next decade of my life. Victor noticed the phone. He raised an eyebrow. I imagine you'll have some interesting conversations waiting for you. I gave a quiet laugh. The truth has a way of finding its way out. As the boardroom erupted into small talk and handshakes, my eyes lingered on the folder now stamped with signatures. I thought of the boxes in my parents' basement, filled with pieces of me they never valued. I thought of pizza slices wobbling on crystal plates. I thought of years of silence, of humiliation, of invisibility. And then I thought of this moment. My name is inked on a contract beside Victor Ramirez's. My future unfolding is undeniable. The truth had walked into the light. And no one, not even my family, could shove it back into the shadows again. Because the truth, in the end, always finds its way out. Forbes just announced their 40 Under 40 cover. The words glowed on my phone screen at 6 in the morning, crisp black letters against white, undeniable. My photo filled the preview, a professional headshot taken months earlier, hair swept back, blazer sharp gaze steady. Beneath it, the headline, "Built without a dollar of family money." The pacing of the morning quickened before I had even set down my coffee. Notifications poured in like a flood breaking a dam. LinkedIn pinged with Victor's post, thrilled to announce our partnership with Aurora Events and its brilliant CEO, Emily Carter. The comments multiplied faster than I could read them. Congratulations, Emily. Inspiring story. proof that grit matters more than privilege. Then came the texts: colleagues, former classmates, strangers who had read the article overnight, and threaded between them dozens from my family. Olivia. What the hell is this? Mom? Tell me this is fake. Dad. Your mother is inconsolable. The irony pressed against me from every angle. For years they had labeled me invisible. Now the world itself was seeing me clearly than they ever had. I opened the Forbes article, fully scrolling slowly despite the torrent of adrenaline in my chest. The first line stopped me cold. At 34, Emily Carter built Aurora Events into a multi-million-dollar enterprise without a dollar of family money. There it was spelled out in black and white for the entire country. No more hiding, no more minimizing. The story I had carried silently was now public record. The pacing of the article mirrored my life's slow beginnings: quiet labor, then acceleration into contracts and expansion. It named Maria as head chef, James as operations manager, highlighted the pinnacle deal, quoted Victor himself. Her vision turned what others dismissed as a side hustle into one of the fastest-growing event companies on the East Coast. And then came the juxtaposition I had dreaded, but knew was inevitable. The photo from Pinnacle's boardroom, me signing the contract. Victor shaking my hand. Champagne glasses lifted in celebration, is placed side by side with a snapshot taken last Thanksgiving. In that photo, my family stood smiling around a roasted turkey. Olivia is front and center in a shimmering dress, my parents flanking her, beaming, and me barely visible in the background, half hidden behind a doorway holding a tray of dishes. The contrast was brutal, poetic, and viral bait. By mid-morning, the article was everywhere. News aggregators reposted it. Twitter hashtags trended. The LinkedIn pizza photo merged with the Forbes headline into a perfect storm. Pizza on Crystal at the Carters. Daughter built an empire in silence. Built without family money. My parents' curated reputation, polished for decades, crumbled in real time. I sat in the Florida hotel lounge across from Victor, both of us nursing black coffee. He scrolled through his phone and chuckled. Sometimes he said, looking up at me, the best revenge is success. I let the words settle. Revenge had never been my aim, not really. But hearing him say it out loud in that quiet morning was strangely satisfying. I lifted my cup in a small toast. To success, then. He raised his in return. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed against the table relentlessly. Olivia's texts grew more frantic. Mom is crying non-stop. Dad says people at the country club are calling. Everyone saw the pizza photo. How could you do this? As if I had staged the disaster. As if my choosing myself had forced them to order takeout on Christmas Eve. I didn't respond. I simply set the phone aside and watched the sun spill across the marble floors of the hotel lounge. For the first time, I felt no urge to defend myself. The truth had already spoken louder than I ever could. But I imagined them in Connecticut. My mother clutching the phone, mascara streaking down her face, her voice hoarse from calls that went unanswered. My father is sitting in his study, head in his hands, realizing silence would not shield him anymore. Olivia was scrolling furiously, watching her PR clients cancel one by one, her face drained of color. The cut between worlds was cinematic in its cruelty. I was raising a glass of champagne in Florida, surrounded by executives who respected me. My mother sobbed into her telephone in Connecticut as her carefully woven narrative unraveled. And as I looked around the table at Victor and his team, laughter mixing with clinking glasses, I understood the message as clearly as if it had been carved in stone. False honor collapses quickly when the truth is made public. The world was no longer buying the story of Emily the servant, Emily the invisible. The story was rewritten now, not in whispers or excuses, but in headlines and photographs. Built without a dollar of family money, my success was my own, and their downfall, ironically, was also theirs alone. Before we speak, here are my terms. The room went still. The clink of silverware against porcelain ceased, and wine glasses paused midway in the air. My parents and Olivia looked at me with faces caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. I had chosen a quiet restaurant in Manhattan, neutral ground, far from the Connecticut house that had been the stage of so many humiliations. The air here was heavy with expectation, but for once I was not the one waiting for approval. I unfolded a single sheet of paper I had placed deliberately in front of me. The words were printed in clean black ink, the title across the top, Terms of Relationship. My hands didn't shake as I read. 1. Equal respect or no contact. 2. No more servant treatment ever. 3. Public acknowledgement of my success. 4. Genuine apology, not just words. 5. Therapy. Family and individual. These terms are non-negotiable. The pacing was slow, every syllable deliberate. I wanted them to feel the gravity of each point, to sit with the weight of years condensed into a page. My mother blinked rapidly, her hands clutching the edge of the tablecloth. Emily, this is ridiculous. You don't negotiate with family. I kept my voice even. I'll be your daughter, not your servant. If that's too much to ask, then there is no family left between us. My father cleared his throat, looking older than I remembered. We're here to talk, not to sign contracts. I slid the paper across the table, the crisp sound cutting through the tension. You don't have to sign it with a pen. But if you want me in your lives, these are the conditions. I won't live another day as the scapegoat you've made me. Olivia's gaze dropped to the paper. For once, her usual confidence faltered. She picked it up, scanned the lines, then set it back down carefully. She's serious, Mom, she whispered. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Scapegoat. Where on earth did you get that idea? It was Olivia who answered, her voice shaking slightly. From me. She inhaled, then exhaled in a rush. I've been in therapy since January. My therapist, she explained it. Mom, you needed one of us to carry the weight to make the rest of us look good. And Emily was the easy target. The twist landed harder than I expected. I stared at my sister, waiting for her smirk, waiting for the punchline. But instead, her eyes glistened with tears. I let it happen, she admitted. I enjoyed being the favorite. I knew you were smarter, more capable, but Mom made me feel special by making you feel small. And I didn't stop her. I played along. The words cracked something inside me. For years I had suspected it, but hearing it spoken out loud felt like someone had ripped the bandage off an old wound. My mother's face drained of color. Olivia, don't. But Olivia pressed on. It's true, Mom. We laughed when she said she wanted to apply to Cornell. We turned her room into my closet. We acted like she was a maid. You called her between jobs when she was already running a company. You did it because you needed someone to carry the shame. The pacing accelerated. Voices rose. Accusations tumbled out. My father buried his head in his hands, muttering, I should have stopped it. My mother shook her head violently, denial pouring from her lips. You don't understand. I only wanted the best for both of you. I thought Emily wasn't cut out for more. I leaned forward, every word steady as stone. You thought wrong, and your assumption cost me a childhood. I carried your disdain like chains, and I still built something extraordinary. I didn't need your money. I didn't need your connections, but I did deserve your respect. That's what this paper is about. It's not about punishment. It's about justice. Silence fell, broken only by the faint hum of the restaurant's heating system. The paper lay between us like a mirror none of them wanted to look into. My father finally raised his eyes. Emily, what happens if we agree? Then we start again, I said. As equals. As a family where each person has value. You'll acknowledge me publicly, not as the help, not as invisible, but as your daughter. And if you can't, then we end this here. Olivia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'll sign it, she whispered. I want to change. My mother's shoulders sagged, her pride fighting her shame. And if I can't, she asked quietly. Then you lose me, I answered. The pacing slowed again, each word sinking deep. The truth hung heavy in the air. No more hiding, no more pretending. Finally, my father reached across the table, his hand trembling as he touched the page. "We'll try," he said. "God help us. We'll try." I pushed the paper toward them fully, my fingers brushing against theirs for the first time in years. There is no forgiveness without fairness. Remember that. The moment crystallized, symbolic and irreversible. The terms of relationship lie between us like a contract of survival, a line drawn through decades of shadows. Later that night, as I walked out of the restaurant, I glanced back once. My parents and Olivia sat together, heads bent over the paper, no longer united in denial, but fractured in reflection. Fade. I stepped into the glow of Aurora's storefront, my company's name shining proudly in silver above the glass doors. My employees inside were laughing, carrying trays, building dreams together. The contrast was striking. One table is still wrestling with the truth, another is living in it. And I understood then what I had always known in my bones. There is no true forgiveness without justice. And justice had finally taken its seat at the table. 6 months later, my staff served my parents at my own table. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 2 decades, I had carried trays for them in silence, hidden in kitchens while Olivia dazzled under chandeliers. Now the roles had reversed. My dining room in Manhattan glowed with soft candlelight, glass doors opening to a view of Central Park in summer bloom. And it wasn't my hands carrying the dishes. It was my team, Maria, with her quiet authority, James coordinating every detail, serving a meal worthy of a 5-star review. My parents sat stiffly at the table, unsure whether to speak or to keep their eyes lowered. Olivia fiddled with her napkin, twisting the fabric until it wrinkled. The clatter of silverware against porcelain was the only sound for several moments. I let the silence stretch. It wasn't revenge I wanted, it was recognition. To sit in the same room without being treated as the servant. The pacing of the evening was slow and deliberate. Courses arrived one by one, each more elegant than the last. Roasted duck with orange glaze, a salad of heirloom tomatoes and burrata, handmade pasta delicate and perfect. My team moved with practiced grace and I leaned back watching. My father finally cleared his throat. "Your staff is impressive." "They're not just staff," I corrected gently. "They're the reason Aurora thrives. We built this together." My mother pressed her lips tightly, as if swallowing words she didn't know how to form. Olivia avoided my gaze, then finally whispered, "This is beautiful." The admission sounded strange coming from her. I smiled faintly. Beautiful things happen when respect is part of the recipe. The twist revealed itself in every detail. They were being served not just dinner, but the very embodiment of what they had dismissed for years. My company, my vision, my people. The same skills they once mocked as useless had blossomed into an empire, and now they sat tasting the fruits of it. On the sideboard against the wall sat the black leather folder, no longer carrying contracts, just resting like a relic. A reminder of the moment everything shifted. Guests often asked about it, and I told them it was decoration now. The true contract was written in the lives of the people around me, in the respect we demanded and gave. Halfway through dinner, my mother finally spoke. Her voice cracked. "Emily, I don't know how to undo the past." "You don't need to undo it," I said evenly. "You need to acknowledge it and live differently from now on." My father nodded slowly. "We were blind. That's on us." Olivia met my eyes at last. "I let myself believe being loved meant you had to be unloved. I don't want that anymore." The words landed softly like an overdue apology. I didn't rush to accept them. I let them settle between us, fragile but real. I raised my glass, the stem cool in my hand. Success doesn't need permission. Respect is non-negotiable. My voice was steady, not bitter, not triumphant, just true. The pacing of the evening lightened after that. Conversation grew more natural, though still cautious, like new ground being tested. Dessert arrived pistachio souffle, airy and delicate. And for the first time, my mother smiled without strain. When the plates were cleared, I stood. I don't know where we go from here. That choice is yours as much as mine. But this table tonight isn't about servitude, it's about possibility. They rose slowly, lingering in the glow of the candles. My father touched my shoulder, tentative. Thank you for giving us this chance. My mother whispered, I'm sorry. Olivia's eyes shimmered, words unspoken but heavy. As they left, my staff quietly dismantled the table, moving with their usual efficiency. I stood at the window watching the city lights flicker against the darkness of Central Park. The black folder caught my eye from the shelf. A symbol of battles fought and one of shadows turned into light. And I wondered as the night folded around me what choice others would make in my place. If it were you, would you open the door again? Or would you keep it closed forever? The camera of memory zooms out past the dining room, past the glass doors into the wide expanse of Central Park. Leaves shimmer under the street lamps, car horns hum faintly in the distance, and the city breathes on indifferent yet full of stories like mine. Because in the end, healing is not a single dinner or a single apology. It's the decision we make every day to demand respect, to set boundaries, and to choose whether the door stays open or closed. And that decision, like success itself, will always belong to me. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the playlist now showing on screen.